I can hear you saying point of order, but I cannot see you anywhere on the screen. Do you have your card? The card is not working. Okay, it's working now. So what is out of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My concern is Honorable Kerry is bringing out very valid points. However, for him to use statements like Africans, like CNN, will never understand, will never know, that puts all of us to be in a point of ignorance that we do not know, except for Honorable Kerry. Can he use more dignified language towards Africans, where I'm one of them?
Madam Speaker, valid point.
I do not want to defend you. I know that you have a lot of respect for Africans, but I don't want to defend you. So,
Madam Speaker, you got it perfectly. In fact, I celebrate Africans. That's why I'm moving this motion. And in fact, I would not want to generalize anybody into a point of ignorance, because I know how well informed Africans are, up to and including my good friend CNN. I was making a reference to the fact that if one does not tell their story the way they want to tell their story might be told by somebody else in a way that you do not want to tell the story. Madam Speaker, I am moving a motion where I would want this parliament to support me so that we can establish a science museum that will create a nexus between scientists, scientific practitioners, policy makers, students, and the publics, different publics, so that we are able to preserve our technological advancements in a museum that is a living museum. Madam Speaker, it might be a point of argument that we already have museums, Madam Speaker. But the kind of museum I'm talking about is not a museum of natural history. A museum of natural history, as they exist today, is a museum that I would refer to as a dead museum. And with all respect, Madam Speaker, dead in the fact that in these museums, we go to see exhibitions of taxidermies or stuffed animals that are already dead. We go to see things of the past. A science museum is normally a museum that exhibits, is a living museum. It is able to cover the history of technological advancements from the past, taking into cognizance what is happening in the present, and also trying to imagine a future as we would want to imagine it, Madam Speaker. In Kenya today, where we are at, if you took just one line of science, a line that I know the Honorable Elisha knows very well, a line of telecommunication, for example, only quarter of a century ago, Madam Speaker, the order of the day was the dial telephone. The order of the day was a call box. But the child born today, a Gen Z, a Gen Alpha, cannot tell you what a call box is. They cannot tell you what a CD-ROM is. They cannot tell you what a floppy drive is. This is knowledge that will be lost, Madam Speaker. This is knowledge that if we do not preserve, we might suffer the fate that our forefathers suffered when traditional historical artifacts were being expatriated from this continent and being exhibited in far-flung capitals. As we speak today, Madam Speaker, it is common knowledge that we've got tens and tons of traditional African artifacts that are on exhibit in capitals far away from this continent. Madam Speaker, in this fourth industrial revolution, Africa cannot suffer the same fate. We ought to proactively stand up and claim our pole position as an African technological giant that Kenya is, to spearhead the new era by establishing science museums that will showcase Africa's scientific greatness, traditional greatness, that will showcase Africa's traditional scientific prowess. Madam Speaker, it was during COVID that people were scampering to look for a remedy. But I dare say, in places like Nyanza, somehow COVID was not as prevalent or was not as bad as it was elsewhere. And Madam Speaker, when you whisper to members from Nyanza, they will tell you that when COVID broke out, they fell back to a traditional remedy that they had used for centuries to cure and remedy malaria. A very bitter herb that is normally taken and boiled and taken as such. And it mitigates against the effects of fever, against the effects of a flu, and it was also working against the effects of COVID. Madam Speaker, this traditional knowledge is what is normally picked up by multinationals. They extract the active ingredients, but because they would not want to have something that they cannot preserve, they additionally add preservatives and conservatives. But even more dangerously, they put up a brand. And when the brand comes on, it gives it a premium position and it becomes an expensive product. But where is the African with the Wairimo plant that is planted in the mountain region that is able to cure a cold or a flu? This Wairimo plant is an active ingredient that is forming part of very many modern medicines, Madam Speaker. But this knowledge, if not preserved, if not exhibited, will go into waste, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the other point I would like to make is that we are coming into a new world. What I called the fourth industrial revolution, mainly driven by artificial intelligence. And you know, artificial intelligence, being the driver of Industry 4.0, relies on data. Data shall fuel the next world. Africa traditionally has not written down its data. Africa's data is not in numerals, it is not in numbers. So today, artificial intelligence is scraping data out of the internet, data that Africa is not present, so that we realize that Africa has not Africanized the internet as much as the internet has internetized Africa. And so, going into the fourth industrial revolution, our data might be missing in the formation of the driving force and the fuel that will drive the fourth industrial revolution. But most importantly, Madam Speaker, data representation. All data centers, main data centers that we are seeing are in the northern hemisphere. We want to see Africa contributing its data so that we are able to drive this fourth industrial revolution. Madam Speaker, with those few points, I would like to call upon members to support me in this motion that seeks to provide a science museum. Madam Speaker, to bring about a science museum that shall consolidate indigenous scientific and technological innovations, shall be a center of training and research purposes, and also shall be the nexus between the scientists, the science practitioners, the policymakers, and the general publics. Madam Speaker, I thank you, and I ask members to support me on this motion. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Honorable KJ, who is the seconder of your motion?
Madam Speaker, I would like to call upon the Honorable Elisha to second this motion.
Honorable Elisha, you may proceed.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion by Honorable KJ and add that it's important that the country preserves our technologies, our indigenous technologies from outsiders. And I think establishment of a science museum is a good thing. And I want to congratulate Honorable KJ for thinking this far in terms of technology, engineering, and getting Kenya to the next level. I second.
Thank you, Honorable Elisha. Honorable members, I now propose the question that aware that Article 11(2)(b) of the Constitution provides that the government shall recognize the role of science and indigenous technologies in the development of the nation. Further aware that the Vision 2030 provides for integration of information, communication, and technology in the country's transformative agenda concerned that there exists no science museum for consolidating indigenous scientific and technological innovations, training and research purposes in East Africa region, appreciating that integration of science and technology would greatly enhance Kenya's economic and societal success, noting that there is potential for growth in the technology sector by establishing a science museum, further noting that the informal science education plays a key role in the progression of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, acknowledging that science museums operate as the nexus between science practitioners, policymakers, and public, recognizing the fact that a science museum is in the country would greatly impact on the economy of the country in the quest to become an industrialized nation. Now, therefore, this House resolves that the national government, through the relevant ministries, establishes and operationalizes a science museum in the country. Honorable members, we may now go ahead to debate. And I see the Honorable Charles Ngusi Anguna, member for Mwingi West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity just to defend and also to support my brother, Honorable KJ, for bringing up this motion, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we need to note that in life, we need science in every sphere of our life, because if you go and travel to this purported developed world, everywhere you go, there's a museum. For instance, the country I am proud of, where I have a lot of interest, is Greece, Athens. And Madam Speaker, this is one of the countries we need actually to go and benchmark on things to do with museums. If you go to Acropolis right now, you will find thousands of tourists visiting that country. If you go to War Museum in Athens, you will find thousands of tourists. If you go to Tate Britain Museum, which is in London, you will find thousands of the tourists, and many others, including so many museums you can think of. So museums will act as a key driver of economic growth in any country because of the tourism we are going to get in that. Madam Speaker, also establishing the Science Museum in this country will also help our learners and even our university students in advancing knowledge, leading to new discoveries in our country and also innovations. Who said we cannot become innovative? Who said we cannot even become more intelligent than other developed world, Madam Speaker? That is why I'm supporting this. Madam Speaker, establishing this science museum will also help us live a better life than other countries. We will talk of boosting our productivity in many aspects if we do a good research on them, Madam Speaker. And also, establishing this museum will also facilitate us in accessing information. When do we store information? Like discoveries, we usually do have a lot of scientists in our country. Where do we store this information? If we can have a science museum, we will be able to access a lot of necessary information, including our historian museum. Like, for example, if you want to get the facts about our founding father, President Kenyatta, where are we going to collect this information? We don't have museums that actually preserve our information and knowledge, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the issue of establishing museum will also help us to collect, preserve, and display our scientific significance artifacts, and that is why I am supporting. I am happy my brother KJ has borrowed a lot when he was bringing up this motion in Greece, recognizing the likes of Aristotle, Heraclitus, these Greek historians who actually made the world the way it is. And with those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I fully support this motion. Asante.
Thank you. The Honorable Phyllis Bartol, member for Moiben.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this motion by Honorable KJ. Madam Speaker, a science museum is a museum primarily devoted for science. Madam Speaker, if you travel worldwide, you will discover that in established countries, science museums play a very important role in educating its citizens, its students, its professionals. Madam Speaker, when I was a lecturer teaching at the university, we used to have problems with students, history students. We used to encounter situations where history students or history master students or postgraduate students who are collecting data were not able to get real data, real life data, especially in our museums. Case of in point is the Fort Jesus. We have the one in the CBD, the archives. Madam Speaker, if you visit those spaces, there is nothing lively. It is just they are just documentaries, and they are not communicative. Madam Speaker, if we establish real museums where we have real-time, real information from the past to the present, it is going to be very important and very informative to our postgraduate students. I particularly talk about postgraduate students because I came from academia. If you visit countries like Israel, Madam Speaker, you visit their museums, you get real life experiences. You get, you go with the you get carried. You go back down history. You learn about their cultures. You learn about mummification, where people use, how they used to preserve their dead. And it takes you back history and you feel real. You feel like you can identify. You feel like you can place your hand. It is very communicative. Madam Speaker, that is what is the essence of a science museum. In Kenya, we have so many activities, so many cultures which need to be documented. And these cultures are not just for now, but they are going to shape our future. We are reshaping our curriculum, our education curriculum. We are having CBC, competence-based curriculum, where we want to teach our learners to practice what they are learning in class. Where else can they refer to history? Where can they relate? If we don't have such facilities in Kenya, science museums where they can go and interact with knowledge, they can go and learn, and that one shapes their future. Science says that the past shapes the future. Science museums are very important. We have, we only view our hours in Kenya. The museums which we have in Kenya are only for recreation. We only visit there to pass time, to learn, for tourism. Even the tourists who come to Kenya, I don't think they really take home so much because we don't have so much to talk about. You go to Fort Jesus, it is dead. You only meet those young men and women take you around trying to create stories which even them, they might not be very sure about. And the places are also dilapidated. There's not much to talk about, for instance, the slave trade, which was happening in Kenya. To talk about barter trade, which was going on in the Indian Ocean. If we establish a very communicative science museum, Madam Speaker, we will be able to document all the stories, all the theories which we have heard about Kenya, and we will be having many people visiting this part of Kenya to come and have a feel of what happened in the past. We have our cultures, which are very soon going to get dormant because the young people are not, we don't have a place to preserve it so that even our young people can have a connection. Madam Speaker, these museums will help us appreciate revolution. I mean, culture is not static and life is not static. What will we tell our people in the next 100 years if we don't have somewhere to store this information? What will we tell our people in future if we don't have places to store our stories? We are, for instance, in Kenya at the moment, we are going through a new thing about this issue of impeachment. You know, those are things which, those are stories which we will find them in our museums. Our children will learn that in 2004, sorry, in 2024, a parliament of Kenya had a procedure of impeaching a deputy president. Where else will we store that if we don't have videos to keep them? Maybe not everyone will have an opportunity to come to parliament to read or to get that story, but that story can be found in a science museum. Madam Speaker, what I can say that a science museum will give an illustration where there will be convergence of science. That it will bring science together, it will bring technology together, maths, art, etc. And in that way, it is going to improve our daily lives. We are teaching our students to be innovators. We are teaching our young people to be innovators. Where will they learn about innovation if they don't go and learn or they get knowledge from the past so that they can have, they can relate of what took part in the past and what is currently going on in the present. So, Madam Speaker, I want to applaud Honorable KJ for bringing this very important motion because it is going to shape our lives in a very different way. It is going to inform history. It's going to inform science. It's going to inform knowledge. And it is going to make our system of education even better. Our students, our postgraduate students will have a place to get data. Data is very important in research. And it is only in those science museums that these students can go, sit, interact with real life experiences, and even improve knowledge and knowledge management. With those few statements or those remarks, I support the motion, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Professor. The Honorable Olive Gisairo, member for Kitutu Masaba.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Clive, just for the record, not Olive.
Okay. The Honorable Clive Gisairo, member for Kitutu Masaba.
Thank you, Madam
and
Speaker.
And very proud of Alliance Boys.
Yes, thank you. I am a proud product of Alliance High School, not Alliance Boys. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this very good motion by my friend, Honorable Kiari, on the need to establish a science museum in Kenya because of the many reasons he has raised, which are positive, and to preserve our culture for the future generations. Madam Speaker, African history today is better documented outside Africa than in Africa itself. That if you want to learn about the crowd of mankind, you'll have to go to Europe, visit their museums for them to tell you that the first invention of ABC was actually in Africa. But there is no place in Africa you will find such a piece of documentation. Madam Speaker, this explains to a broader challenge that we have as Africans. We've embraced Westernization. to a point that whatever is African is bad and whatever that is West is good. Madam Speaker, before the arrival of white man, Africans could still do surgery. We had cesarean sections. But who knows this? We've been made to believe that all these medicines, surgeries, operations, bone repairs came with a white man. There is nothing further from the truth. This has gone further to ensure that we believe that the African way of worship was evil. Actually, easily put and simplified as witchcraft. That the white man's way of worship is the right way, and therefore we were forced to discard what was ours. Such a museum, Madam Speaker, will ensure we have what I will simply call positive ethnicity, where each community, their history, their innovations can be put in a place where our young children can be able to see what was good from culture A, what was good from culture B. That brings forth a united country because we are able to learn from each other and embrace what is good from each other and not just seeing what is negative from the other community. Madam Speaker, we may be the last group, because of our education system, who are able to explain slavery. The generations coming after us may not even understand what we are talking about. Because the only knowledge they get about slavery, because we've adopted even the education system, it's what they tell us. It is not what we tell them. It is not what was documented by us. But it's what the white man, the Westerners, will want to tell us about slavery. The perpetrator cannot have a better view of the subject matter than the person affected. The best people to document this, to have this for the future generation, is us, Africans, ourselves. Unlike CNN, who has been to Greece and has interest there, I happen to have toured very many African countries. I have been to the deep of Congo. The history is rich, but no one writes it. The outsiders come and they will write how they discovered Mount Kilimanjaro. Where were we when they were discovering it? How they discovered Lake Victoria. Where were the Luos? We cannot sit down for people to discover, even they're discovering us. We discovered Africans. If we don't support such a motion to ensure we are able to give our children something to look back to, something to learn, we've absconded our languages. That we allowed, the Bible is translated to almost all native languages. But the child of today cannot even, they struggle to speak Swahili. Forget about my native language. Where are we heading as Africans? The traditional songs, all these will disappear if we don't put a museum that is not just well equipped but is always revamped, supported financially, and enabled to ensure it keeps updating itself, upgrading itself, using modern technologies to ensure the information not only is retained within the museum itself, but reaches all parts of our people, not just in Africa, but in the world. This is possible, and I strongly support this motion by Honorable KJ. And I like his views. He has an artistic mind. A mind that shows the creativity of our people that nobody is ready to showcase. Honorable Kerry, thank you for such a motion, and I support in full. I submit, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Julius Ole Sunkuli, member for Kilgoris.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much for this opportunity to discuss this motion by my good friend KJ. And I'm a good lover of museums. When I go to Washington, D.C., I always visit the Smithsonian Museum. And the Smithsonian Museum has all those types of museums. It's a museum of history, museum of science, museum, all these museums. And when you look at a definition of what a museum, a science museum is, it's supposed to be a museum that collects and displays objects having scientific interest. And those people who run science museum, first of all, must have things to display, things that they show for themselves. And then they use the forum of the science museum for education. I support this motion because I know that the honorable mover is a visionary man who looks very far away. In Kenya, it's of course a good idea. I don't know whether it's an idea whose time has come. Because unfortunately for our country, we are not very well known for scientific innovation. Because these things we are supposed to display must either be as a result of our physics, as a result of our chemistry, as a result of our geology, as a result of the technological information, and so on. These things, we are still developing them. And I agree, we need to use these museums maybe as incubators towards the development of a good scientific environment in our country. We need to orient our minds, the minds of our young people, to start thinking about science. Well, I am a lawyer and my specialty is maybe history and literature. And nowadays, those things are, of course, considered not to be as important as they were when we were in school. But in truth, to speak the truth, I think science is acquiring a new meaning, especially technology. And we require a place where we dedicate ourselves to these things. And Madam Speaker, I hope that if this thing becomes a reality, that we don't make the same mistake that we're making with the national libraries. Recently, the country decided to devolve national libraries and make them the work of the counties. Libraries will die there because that is not a priority of the counties. If you take these kind of museums and tell them the county to do it, they do not have the same vision as my honorable friend KJ has. They will go and bury it in the counties and forget about it. Let us begin by starting it big in the different big towns of Kenya, in the city of Nairobi, in the city of Mombasa, in the city of Eldoret, in the city of Nakuru, and of course, in the city of Kisumu. If we had big places in those big places, then our young people will learn their science there. They will learn to store the information that they have, and they will learn to respect the fact that we learn from the past. Scientific knowledge in Kenya is what we need to move this country forward. Where Korea is, Koreans can, of course, display how their original car looked like, and then inspire young people to make their own cars. We can also perhaps have our own Uhuru car in that museum. We can have the good old RNH, the good old East African Railway in that museum. We can we have something to display, but we must use that as a springboard towards going back forward to the new innovations. Madam Speaker, I support.
Thank you very much. The Honorable John Gitonga, member for Manyata. The Honorable, I do not know whether the order, Honorable Gitonga, I can see you are lifting up your hand. I'm not even able to view you on the screen. What is out of order, Honorable Member for Nyamira County?
Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me this opportunity. It was not a point of order. I just wanted you to take note that I'm within, but my card got lost somewhere. I wanted to contribute. So if you can allow me to continue.
Since you do not have a card, please take your seat. I'll make a decision on what to do. You may proceed, Member for Manyata.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I authorize to support this motion. Honorable Speaker, as I commend my brother, Honorable Member for Dagoretti, for such a thoughtful motion. And Honorable Speaker, I am very intrigued with the proposal of a science museum. Honorable Speaker, it is true that we have allowed for too long our stories to be told by people who actually don't care much about our history. Honorable Speaker, a science museum will be a very, very important establishment for the future of this country and for the future, Honorable Speaker, of Africa, in terms of the advances that have been there since time immemorial on our advancement in science. And interestingly, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Kenje, who is in the arts, is the one who is proposing a museum for science. So it is very interesting. And Honorable Speaker, I believe this country has contributed a lot in the advancement of science in the world. Honorable Speaker, just the other day I was reading a book and found that one of the things that make what we call dirty genes was gotten from this country, somewhere in Naivasha, Honorable Speaker. But if you look and go around, you'll find the patent for such things is not in this country, but is somewhere in the US. Honorable Speaker, it is true that even our colonial history and the contributions of Kenyans and Africans in the colonial history was documented by the whites, but not by the people who actually were supposed to give the story, Honorable Speaker. And it is sad, it is not right, it is a big loss for, Honorable Speaker, our African culture, that even what we depend on is something that we are not coming from ourselves, but coming from people who actually visit this country. We have advancements even in gastronomy research being done in this country for years back. But Honorable Speaker, you will not find those things in the history because we don't have a science museum, Honorable Speaker. That is why I really commend this motion. I also want to say it has a lot of contribution in ensuring that we create a niche, a multi-million niche of research, and ensure that we also advance the technologies that have come from within and not depending mostly, Honorable Speaker, from what we get from without. We have a lot of interest in Kemri, And Honorable Speaker, I feel that is one of the organizations that need to be well guarded. But Honorable Speaker, government really does not give much for KEMRI on research. It tells you why we have a very low output when it comes to science research, when we really need continuous research and embracement of research in terms of the problems that we face today in science, Honorable Speaker. We just had COVID the other day, and there was no much money that was put to see if we can even have our own medicine coming from our own institutions and from our own people, Honorable Speaker. And I believe for a country that is bombarded a lot with a lot of things from the West, Honorable Speaker, it is upon this National Assembly and upon this administration that is there today to ensure that we put resources to ensure we improve on the technologies that can actually help this country advance and continue being ahead. And I'm happy that today we are talking of AI. And interestingly, I heard KJ mention that with AI, we should be able to document even things from our past and ensure that they are well put together in a science museum, Honorable Speaker. I also want to say that this country has also not put a lot of effort in ensuring that we also are leading way on the research on artificial intelligence. We are waiting for others to do things, then we pick it up, Honorable Speaker. That's why you find even many of the applications and many of the things that are happening here today, we have embraced technologies from outside the country without empowering our own technological advancement here, Honorable Speaker. I believe all this can be said, but if there is no funding, deliberate funding, we will not be able to keep up with what is happening in the world. The world is moving too fast. And when it is moving too fast, there is need to put more efforts. While we encourage job tourism outside Kenya, Honorable Speaker, we should be able to have a strategy to retain some minds within Kenya for advancement of our own country and ensure that we are able to, we don't have a brain drain in terms of workforce. And Honorable Speaker, I believe this motion supported 100%. And many of the researches that are happening in our universities are being funded from the West. Belinda and Gates Foundation.
Who identifies that this, for example,